Welcome back to Petty Astrology. I'm your host, Kaycee Felton-Lui. You know how it's been, well, the way it's been lately. Things feel very emotionally charged. There's a lot of us versus them thinking going around, and people are in protective mode in a lot of ways. And it's not been an easy recipe for a lot of us, particularly those of us who are more sensitive. And this week, the week that we're in the middle of the day that this podcast comes out, is kind of a crescendo of some of that energy. And I already had somebody that I mentioned this to, and I never say these things to fearmonger or stress you out, because the truth is that even though the energy is ratcheting up, it doesn't mean that you are going to have a bad day or that you can't enjoy yourself this week or that nothing good is going to happen. That's just not true. But what it does mean is that a lot of this is being stirred up in the collective, and it impacts every one of us a bit differently. But we often see these notable moments, whether it's in our personal lives or on the world stage, where this energy is rippling out. And so for me, I like to have a little bit of a heads up and just know that not only is this coming week historic, and no, I'm not just talking about the United States presidential election, although that's a pretty big one that I think is a big part of why a lot of this is so heightened, because the United States has placed itself kind of at the center of the world in a lot of ways. We are holding the world hostage. So a lot of people have eyes on what's going on here and who's going to be pulling those strings. But I talked all about my thoughts on the election in a bonus podcast that I put out for sponsors over on Patreon. Astrologer Jen Russell joined me for that, and we actually had the premiere the day that I'm recording this, and it was great to watch it with everyone. And it's not easy, the future that we're heading into, but nothing is easy. Life isn't easy. I don't think that we came to Earth for things to be easy, but I also don't think we came here to suffer under the boot of fascism. But here we are. We obviously need to change some things majorly, and there's a lot of work to be done. But I digress. It's a big week, and it's more than just politics. And I'll talk more about voting at the end of this episode, so make sure you stick around for that, because I want everybody to be safe and well prepared for the intensity that is potential with this energy. And I also want you to know that, you're not going through this alone, that there are plenty of us who care, and that even though people may be more reactive, more emotional, and, maybe even more violent, there are also a lot of people who care. There will be people standing up for one another, standing up for their right to participate, even in this limited way, in the electoral system. And I think we're also going to continue to see people standing up for what's right on the world stage. People have had enough. There has been a lot of loss and violence, whether it's through pandemics, genocides, and climate catastrophes. All of this stuff is a lot. It's heavy. It's heavy to feel this wave that we're in coming down, and kind of not knowing where we are in the ocean of possibilities right now. But I can say with 100% certainty that it is really important that we continue taking care of ourselves, continue showing support for one another, connecting to other people, building community, not just closing in on ourselves and protecting ourselves and hunkering down, living in fear of some unknown other taking what we have, what we've earned. There is a lot of that in the air right now. And it is all so very rooted in fear. So, as always, feel the feelings this week. But just know that other people are not going to be able to manage things maybe as well as you hopefully will. Today on the podcast, I talk about this week's Scorpio new moon and using it to reach for transformation. Then a look at the astrology of another big week ahead and my advice for American voters. Let's talk about the new moon in Scorpio. And I'm excited for this one. And you guys know me by now. I look forward to a new moon, a full moon, a milestone of any kind. I think that those things are actually really helpful for human beings, marking time, looking forward to things, but also harnessing the energy of the moment and utilizing it to make our lives more what we want them to be. And this Scorpio new moon, it's a powerful one. It's a powerful one. We've got a lot of really powerful energy this year, as challenging as it has been, but that's how it goes. A lot of times when there are opportunities for us to make big gains with the energy, it's often when the world looks like it's going to shit. It looks like, a bunch of stuff is happening and a lot of us are struggling, and those challenging moments are actually opportunities. And that's very in line with Scorpio energy. And if you're new here, by the way, I'm a Scorpio, so I feel very entitled to speak on this one. So here's the deal. This is going to be happening on Friday, November 1st at 5:47 a.m. Pacific time. So a lot of us here on the West Coast will probably be sleeping for this. And by the way, that's fine. I once had somebody on TikTok be like, I'm not going to be awake at that time. And I was like, you don't have to be awake. The energy's still there. And so the energy of any lunation, whether it's a new moon, a full moon, it lasts for a few days. So it's not like you need to greet the moment that it's happening, right? I would say that if that was something we needed to do. And I've never said that because we don't need to do that. So early Friday morning for us here on the West Coast, and it is the day after Halloween, so, just something to keep in mind. That build of energy on Halloween, there's going to be some intensity to it. And so if you're listening to this podcast on the day it comes out, we are already in the moon phase leading up to the new moon, which is usually when a lot of emotional stuff gets stirred up. And there's a reason for that. That is part of the monthly cycle that each and every one of us goes through collectively. And the reason a lot of these emotions and things are being stirred up within us is that so we can gain clarity. But if we're not looking at it that way, we might kind of miss that. So just know that whatever is coming up for you leading up to this new moon, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. Even if it's uncomfortable, there's information there that is leading you to take some new approaches and reshape your plans in a strategic way. So take note, observe how you're feeling, what's coming up, what is hurting, what is helping. All of that is going to let you know, what do we need to tweak for the Scorpio new moon? This new moon is happening at 9 degrees and 35 minutes of Scorpio. So it is, the essence of Scorpio energy. And really the only aspect that it's making is trine to Saturn in Pisces, which is still retrograde. And so this is a very interesting new moon. Because in addition to the new moon itself, there's always other astrology. There always is other stuff going on. So when people are like, oh, it's all this new moon business, just know that there's other things happening that are adding to the energy and making it even more pronounced. It's not just the new moon. It's rarely ever just one thing that's doing everything. But in addition to this very watery new moon, we have Mars in Cancer opposing Pluto in Capricorn all throughout this week. And I'll talk about that in the last segment more. But just know that there is just this intense emotional energy happening this week on all fronts, which means that people are going to be more reactive, they are going to be more sensitive, and yeah, the world news is going to be a lot. It has continued to be a lot, and like I said at the beginning, it's been ratcheting up. That is going to continue. We are dialing it up. We're kind of in go time this week as we lead up to the election and what's following after. And then, of course, we have Pluto moving into Aquarius for the next 20 years on November 19th. So there's a lot of change and transformation in the air. And as I talked about on last week's podcast about Scorpio season and grief, we are in such a collective transformative moment, and anything collective is going to affect everybody individually, right? So we are going through it all together, but in different ways. But all this to say is that we are transforming because the world is transforming, and we need to rise to meet the moment. And so this Scorpio energy is really helpful for that, because Scorpio energy is very much about power. And I think that we tend to villainize that. And we look at it as a negative thing, right? Because in our culture, so many people that hold positions of power abuse that power. So it just like has this negative connotation that doesn't necessarily need to be there. Because that is our culture, a lot of us have internalized this idea that we're helpless in a certain way. We're watching all of this big stuff happen in the world, and we feel like we are disempowered, that we can't really do enough to make a difference because we can't stop it right now, because we can't make it all better. And in doing that, we disempower ourselves. We reinforce this existing system that says, sit down, be quiet, and accept the status quo. And so oftentimes, yes, the culture is reinforcing us disempowering ourselves, but at the end of the day, we're kind of the gatekeepers for that. And we have the opportunity to refuse to be disempowered, to refuse to sit idly by and say, you know, the things that are happening in this world, watching people abuse one another, watching fascism rise, we don't have to be in support of that by either choosing to do nothing or deciding that whatever we can do isn't going to be enough. So with this new moon in Scorpio, there is this opportunity to really reflect on our personal power in a major way, because we can have personal power by stepping up, making connections in our community, getting more involved in how things function. And we had a really great conversation this past week in Petty Astrology Club about this very subject. It's really important to remember that, you know, we don't have all of the time in the world. A lot of us are struggling to make ends meet. We have responsibilities. We're trying to keep roofs over our head. It's not about doing it all. It's not about you fixing everything. It is about joining with other people, recognizing what we do have to offer, the resources, the skills, the time, and being economical about it. Yeah, maybe we only have a few hours a week to dedicate to this. Well, then let's make those few hours really significant, really special. Let's put the most that we can into those few hours a week. That's an example of stepping into our power and being economical about it, because this is a long haul. And that's very apparent in this new moon. These types of intentions that we might be setting with the new moon, because the new moon is always about planting seeds. It's always about starting new things. And it doesn't have to be, you know, completely, totally new and out of left field. But this is an opportunity to take a new approach. And yeah, some of those things might be brand new. They might be really unfamiliar, and that's okay. Because part of owning your power is also knowing that, yeah, you might not have it all figured out right this moment. You might not have all of the answers or every single skill that you're going to need to do the things that need to be done in your life and in the collective. That's okay. The standard isn't perfection and already cooked and done. All right, we do a lot of our learning through living, through experience, through trial and error. And that's one of the beautiful things about Scorpio energy. It isn't about doing things right away, getting them done and off the plate. Scorpio energy understands that there are some things that are worth the time and effort over the long haul. And if we're talking about collective change, that is a long haul commitment. We have to get out of this American way of thinking where instant gratification, or like the world is a customer service hotline and things are going to be fixed right away. That's just not what we're in. But on a collective level, what's really important to think about with this new moon is, what is your role? What is your power? Where could you be stepping further into it and not sitting back and letting other people decide your fate and your future? This is about empowering yourself and taking your place in the collective. It's your place. Nobody else can take your place because nobody else can be you. You have unique contributions to this whole project that we're in, this group project that every one of us is in by being a living creature here on Earth. And we know there's a lot of work to be done, but not everybody can do what you can do. Not everybody is thinking what you're thinking, and that doesn't mean that you're always going to be right, and that's okay. You need to be okay with making mistakes, with not knowing everything. That's part of owning your power too, is knowing that, yeah, I might not have it all figured out right now, but I will learn, I will grow, I will transform. Scorpio energy is adaptable. So commit to adapting, commit to evolving. That is stepping into your transformation. You are not going to be the same person in a year that you are right now. And that can be a really beautiful thing. So think about that. Think about where you want to be 6 months from now, and how stepping into your personal power will help the collective. Now, on a personal level, I also want you to revisit your ambitions. Many of us are conditioned to play it small, play it safe. What if you decided to take bigger swings and understand, yeah, maybe it won't be perfect on the first try. Maybe it won't work out. Maybe it will, though. Maybe it will. But either way, all of this to say is you need to be making moves. You need to be taking steps and revisiting your ambitions, the things that you really desire at the deepest parts of yourself, past all the cobwebs and the darkness. What are you afraid to say that you want, or to be seen wanting? Ooh, gosh, how embarrassing to want things out of life. To have something you're striving for, that you're building, and to not be there yet. Ugh, humiliating. And I'm just kidding, of course. I'm just trying to make a point. That it can be seen as embarrassing or uncool to be seen trying and wanting. But the things that we want so bad, that we need in our soul, at the end of the day, even if it's challenging, it won't really matter what other people think. That's the level that I want us to kind of focus on here. The things that are so important to us, so deeply connected to us, that even God himself couldn't talk us out of it. Bring those things to light. Really contemplate them. Because even if there are challenges, those are the things that you're going to get back on that horse and keep riding towards. So what is worth it to you? What is actually valuable to you to ride it out, to transform through? Because clarifying those values for yourself is going to help you keep your eye on the prize as we go through these collective transformations together. I think it's important to actually write this stuff down, keep track of it, because all of this astrology that I talk about, it's all really about personal development. It's our journey, our personal journey. And, I'm kidding around the way that I'm saying it, but the truth is that we're all on our individual journeys, and they intersect and they interconnect, and that is really beautiful and that is really powerful. But nobody can decide for you what is so important to you at your core that you're willing to put the energy in, put the time in. I hope that there are things that you want to do in this world, big or small. You don't have to impress anybody with these things. These are things that are true and important to you. Maybe it's, buying a home, a safe place to live, stability. A lot of us want that, right? We want to connect to those things and connect with other people who may also want some of those things or are striving for them, or maybe are facing social and systemic obstacles to getting those things. We want to join forces and get help where we need to, because none of our ambitions have to be achieved in total isolation. Our connections with one another and our support for one another can obviously be a part of that. And yeah, we might know people that are haters and doubters, and we don't need to tell them all of our ambitions. We need to be honest with ourselves about what we want. And often the biggest obstacle is ourselves, believing that the things that we want aren't possible for us. And the only thing that really makes that true is believing that, because then we never take a first step. We never even get close to it because we never even try. But trying, being honest with ourselves, being real about what it is we need and want and desire, that's power, and that's magic, because that's how we open portals of possibility for ourselves. And if you do internet spirituality, people are really into portals, whatever, fucking portals. I think that every moment that we are alive is a portal. It's a gateway. It's an opportunity to take us from where we are now to where we want to be. And that is really the energy of this new moon. Where do you want to be? What do you want to be? How do you want to be it? What's worth it to you to not give up, to keep riding that horse, to stay on that journey? What's worth your energy and time and ambition? And how can you feed those parts of yourself? How can you connect with yourself more deeply to channel your energy in the direction of the things that you do want? Because you are a very powerful being, and you may be tired, you may be exhausted from the state of the world. I understand. I am too. But that doesn't mean that who we are and what we want doesn't matter. And in fact, embracing those things, striving for them, adds to the collective. Power doesn't have to be about fucking other people over. It never had to be. It really didn't. But some people choose to use their energy that way. But that doesn't have to be you. This new moon in Scorpio is a portal to your ambition. It's a portal to transform you from who you are now to the more empowered version of yourself that you can be. In addition to setting intentions and, really getting clear with yourself, writing things down, if you wanted to do any kind of ritual around this new moon, I would do something that represents this sense of transformation that we are all stepping into, whether we want to or not. The change is here. The change is coming. Where do you want the change to take you? How do you want to rise from the ashes of this moment in time? Who do you want to be when you come out the other side? You've probably already noticed that the energy of this week is a lot. People are on one. I don't know a better way of saying it. People are fucking on one, all right? People are very in their feelings right now, and they're really willing to go off. I actually just got back in the house. One of my own neighbors, never seen this dude before, was like cussing me out because apparently I was in his way in a shared space. So that was really weird. But like stuff like that is kind of par for the course at this particular moment and in this particular week. So you want to be very aware of your own feelings, because you don't want to be one of those reactive people that just gets caught in the wrong moment and goes off on someone. Unless you do, then, do your thing. But I really recommend staying out of it and conserving your energy for things that are more important. And one of those things could be really touching base with yourself and figuring out what it is that you really need and want, as I was saying in the last segment. But when you do that inner emotional work, when you really sit with yourself and make yourself a safe space to feel things, just feel things. Like, you don't have to solve the problem. Just like, I am a safe space for myself to just have a fucking feeling. It's much easier said than done, but it's one of the most important things that we can be doing with this energy, instead of just like getting everything all over people, whether they're people we care about or they're strangers. But it is really important to know that this week is just going to be one of those weeks where people are on one. And unfortunately, this coincides with the United States election, and tensions are high. I don't want to downplay how intense things feel right now. And a lot of us have very good reasons to be emotional and angry. And then there are other people that maybe they have good reasons for that, but they're taking it out on the wrong people. So this week is just going to be a lot. We're just going to have to accept that. And the day that this podcast comes out, which is October 30th, we also have Mercury opposing Uranus. It's a lot at once, guys. When you hear me laughing so much, it's a sign that it's just a lot. And, laughing through it, lightening things up for yourself, being kind to yourself and to other people, that can be a really powerful and helpful thing. Because I can't tell you how many days where, like, somebody has let me in on a busy, crowded, traffic-y street, and that little tiny action from a stranger really turned my day around. We underestimate the power of the little things. So my advice is to turn this energy inward. I want everybody to really watch their anxiety, especially over the next few days as Mercury is separating from Uranus, because there's an opportunity for a lot of anxiety. And when we have a lot of energy going on in general anyways, even if people aren't aware of that, they still feel it on a subconscious level. So the energy right now, as we all well know, is a lot. It's a lot. And so it's very easy for our anxiety to just find ways to feed itself. We don't want to feed the anxiety. We want to remember our bodies, grounding ourselves as much as possible. You don't have to be perfectly grounded, perfectly settled, but just giving ourselves space to breathe, to connect with our physical being. Do some movement, some exercise to move through this energy, channel those emotions into physical movement, into creativity, into your spiritual practice, whether that's meditation, whether that is prayer of some kind, whether it's just talking to the universe. It doesn't have to be the way that you were told it has to be. I personally believe that everybody's spiritual connection is super individual. Even people that are in organized religious spaces, I still think that it becomes very individual at the end of the day. Even if there's certain traditions or a lot of crossover, when you are alone with yourself and the universe or whatever it is you believe in, that's between you and that energy. And I really do recommend making space to tune into yourself and to tune into the universe or your higher power or whatever it is that you connect with or believe in. Because with Mercury opposing Uranus, we might find ourselves feeling very inspired. This is like energy for downloads, as they say, which you can also call epiphanies or light bulb moments, whatever that is. It's important to make space to listen and not just like tune everything out, because then we end up tuning out stuff that actually could be helpful for us. And what I have found over the years of engaging in my spirituality more actively is that when I can relax and let go of any resistance and just be present with myself and be present with my body, that's often when I get the best ideas. Sometimes I'll meditate before I do this podcast, and I can't tell you like the stuff that will just flow out of me. Sometimes I really just am not scripted at all on this podcast, and it just, words kind of flow through me. And so by practicing taking care of ourselves and making safe spaces for ourselves, we kind of train our body and our mind to relax and to be in flow. And that's when we're often the most receptive. So we can really lean into this energy this week, as challenging as it is, and get a lot done with it on a personal, emotional level, but also on a creative and intuitive level as well. I talked about Halloween last week, so I'm not going to redo that too much. But again, we're leading up to the new moon on November 1st. So the next few days, again, they're going to be emotional. And we want to do that inner work. We want to love on ourselves. And if we have any extra to spare, it doesn't hurt to love on other people around us, or people in our communities, or even just like random strangers online. Nobody is stopping you from leaving a nice comment. And then, of course, this new moon is in Scorpio. So this energy is very deep. We're going to be moving through that Scorpio moon starting on Halloween earlier in the day here on the West Coast. So we have a little bit of opportunity to kind of prepare for the full weight of the new moon to hit on the 1st. And, over the course of the weekend, there is going to be a lot to the energy, because not only do we just have this powerful Scorpio new moon that will still be in the moon phase of, and not only do we have the US presidential election, but we also have Mercury trine Saturn and sextile Neptune on November 2nd. And then we also have Mercury moving into Sagittarius on the 2nd. So it's just a big day astrologically, and usually when there are days that have just a lot to them, we feel that. It just feels like a whole hell of a lot is going on, and that's because it is. But wait, there's more. On Sunday, November 3rd, then we have Mars moving into direct opposition with Pluto in Capricorn, we've been building up to that all week. Then we have Venus opposing Jupiter, and we have Mars moving into the sign of Leo. Now, something I want to highlight with this energy. First of all, the weekend it's just going to be a lot. That doesn't mean that you need to stay in your house and hide from the world at all. But it does mean that when you're out in the world, you just want to be careful, because again, there's a lot going on, and subconsciously people can kind of feel that. I just think people are going to be like hair trigger tempers and emotional reactions. And for me personally, that is not energy that I prefer to be in public or with people that I don't know very well. You can reflect on, the intensity of this energy and decide what is right for you and how you want to move. But I just want everybody to be aware that it's going to be kind of a wacky weekend, to put it mildly. The news is probably going to be a lot, and I have a feeling that a lot of it will be related to the election, because I know that there have been ballot boxes that have been set on fire in Washington State and Oregon State. That is kind of the energy of the moment. People acting out. And they're going to feel really justified doing it, especially after we have Mercury moving into Sagittarius. I think people are going to be even more annoying with their takes and, their opinions and their beliefs and all of the things that a lot of us have been frustrated with over the past several months at least. That's all going to be really ratcheting up as well. So things are going to feel probably more serious than we want them to feel over this next week. And as always, I want to encourage you to find the joy and the connection where you can, because there will be a lot of it too. Despite what is making the headlines, which is usually the worst stuff, right? The headlines, the media is, if it bleeds, it leads. So keeping that in perspective is going to be really important, because the media often will make us feel like it's the end of the world just because that gets eyes on what they're saying and doing, and that's really what they care the most about. So despite it all, I want you to look for the silver linings. I want you to look for the helpers. I want you to look for the people that care, because there are a lot of us. There are a lot of people that care, and they may express that care differently than we do. But there are a lot of people that care and see a lot of the problems that we see and want to be a part of making things better. So we really need to remind ourselves of that, remind ourselves of our own ambition in that area as well, and continue to stay connected and stay focused on the bigger picture. Because if we zoom in and just focus on everything that's going wrong and all of these people acting out, it's going to fool us into thinking that that's just how things are and things are doomed and it's hopeless and we might as well just stay in our house and never talk to anyone again. And we don't want that because it's not even true. And it's also very devitalizing and draining to live that way. So this is a week that we really want to hang in there. We want to lean on each other for support, and we want to lean into the emotional work that we have to do on a personal level. Now, I want to talk about voting because that is, of course, a big part of this week for the United States, and of course, the rest of the world is going to be paying attention to the results of this election. But if you are somebody that is planning to vote this week, I want to encourage you to vote early if you are able. If you are somebody that was planning to drop your ballot in a ballot box or something like that, as your astrologer, I'm going to advise you to not do that. Unless you're voting for Trump, then put it in the ballot box, I don't care. But otherwise, I'm going to advise you to make sure that your ballot goes in the right place. I would directly submit it to a polling place rather than leaving it somewhere where it might be sort of unattended and vulnerable, because that way it's less likely to be compromised. And if you are doing that and you have the option to track your ballot, make sure that you track your ballot. Election day in and of itself, I think, is going to be pretty contentious. I have a feeling that there will definitely be news about certain people acting up at polling places, causing problems. It could just be people, yelling and making scenes. We've seen people taking their political shirts off. That has been a big thing online. Yeah, if you don't already know, you're not allowed to wear political stuff to the polling place. And some people are seemingly doing it intentionally to make a scene and, have their titties out at the polling place or whatever. You may see some shit. And if you live in an area where you know that people are already pretty contentious, I would advise going to your polling place with a friend or a neighbor and just keeping your eyes peeled. It doesn't mean that anything is going to happen at your specific polling place, but with this energy, again, we will see people acting out. And so it doesn't hurt to just be aware of your surroundings and avoid getting into it with people. It's just not going to be worth it. And if you yourself are a poll worker, I would just have a safety plan, be very aware, and I would de-escalate as much as possible, which I'm sure anybody that is in that situation, I hope that there's some training around that. It's a good idea to de-escalate. It's a good idea to not feed into the fire because people are going to be fiery. I talked in depth about the election and the aftermath in the bonus episode of the podcast, which is about the 2024 presidential election. And it's available in Patreon for Patreon sponsors right now if you want to go take a look at all of that. It's a little over an hour long, so it's a lot of information. And we looked at the major party candidates' transits leading up to and after the election. We also looked at Election Day and Inauguration Day and gave our insights and predictions on that. But another thing that I want to highlight is that we may not have the presidential election results on November 5th. And that's fairly normal because you have to think about the volume of votes and counting things. And we also have people in places like North Carolina that still don't have the infrastructure. So there may very well be delays in terms of the voting count. We already know that Donald Trump supporters have this narrative that the voting system is inherently corrupt and that votes aren't counted or they're overcounted, whatever they are saying. And I actually don't think that there's a lot of evidence to support any of that, but the narrative is still out there, and there will be a lot of conspiracy theories, probably from a lot of different political directions, if and probably when the votes aren't in on the night of the election. So I want to encourage everybody to have patience and maybe share that patience with other people and remind people that you're seeing engaging in conspiratorial thinking about this, that it's really not abnormal and it doesn't mean that anything is wrong just because the election results aren't immediately available. I think that with the astrology of this particular moment, the shit that we normally see around elections these days is just going to be dialed up even higher. And don't shoot me, I am just the messenger. I did not make the universe spin in this direction, but I really think it doesn't hurt to be mentally prepared for that. And also, those of us who are a little bit more aware of the energy and maybe just like how stuff works in politics, we have the opportunity to maybe reassure people, comfort people, remind them that it may take some time to have all of the results that we want. So deep breaths this week. Be a helper if you're in a position to be a helper. And we're going to get through this moment. We will get through this moment. It's going to be hairy. I'm not going to lie to you, but we can do it. We have done a lot this year. And there's more to do, but we can do it. I believe in us. And as a reminder, if you are looking for support, if you're looking for community, make sure that you join the Patreon. You can join for free and you get access to the Patreon chat community so you can talk to other people who like this podcast and want things to be better. And if you are a sponsor of this podcast, we also have the Astro Den Discord, which is a great community. Lots of emotional support memes, but also just really kind-hearted people who love to support one another and connect with one another. And it's just like a little bit of a ray of hope. It's a cozy space, it's a welcoming space, and we'd love to have you in it. So you can join Patreon for free at the link in the show notes, and you can also sponsor this podcast because for just $5 a month, you can be a part of making this happen every week. You also get access to lots of bonus content, including the Astro Den, bonus episodes like the election episode, and more. Y'all are the budget for my work right now, and I truly appreciate it. So I want to thank my patrons for making this show possible and for giving me hope and building this community with me, because we've made a really beautiful space together. I've met some of the most wonderful people doing this work as an astrologer, and I cannot thank you enough, because the people who listen to this podcast, the people who support me in what I do, are the reason that I keep doing it. It's an honor to serve you and to be a part of this community, and I know that we have a lot more to continue to do together. So at the very least, I'll be here walking with you as we go through this time of massive changes. And hey, if you don't want to join the community, if you don't want to be a part of the Patreon, that's fine too. If you wouldn't mind leaving this podcast a nice review and a rating wherever you listen to it, that would be really helpful, because that helps other people find me. That helps me grow the work that I'm doing. And when I grow, when I have more of a budget, I'm able to make a lot more stuff for you guys. So everybody wins. That's it for this week's episode. Tune in next week for even more petty astrology.